Hey, my name is Jimmy Fung, and in today's video, I'll be walking you through exactly everything I did step by step of how I was able to go from zero to $10,502.70 in a 22-day period. And this is possibly one of the most valuable videos you will ever come across on YouTube or online for that matter, because I'll be showing you exactly how I did this as a complete beginner and what you can do to copy me and get to that level as well. So what you're seeing right now is my Stripe. Stripe is my payment processor. It's what I use to collect payments whenever I close deals, collect payments from clients, that type of thing. And I'm just gonna show you this live before someone goes into the YouTube comments and say something like, oh, you're using fake screenshots, you stole someone else's picture, it's fake, whatever the case is. I'm just gonna show you live. So what you're seeing right now is if you look under your overview, I have the custom dates set to December 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. So basically a year, 13 months basically. And if we look into the graph, I made $0 every single month throughout 2022. And then suddenly in December 2022, I made $10,502.70, right? So if we were to change and make that a little bit more specifically, if we were to look at that as a daily view, I'm just gonna make the numbers a little bit closer. So November 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022, what we can see is my very first client paid me on December 1st, 2022, and they paid me $3,000. My second client paid me on December 15, 2022 for 2.5K. And on December 22nd, I closed two clients paying me a total of $5,000. And what we can see is I had four clients, right? So four different sales at an average price of 2.8K, right? So obviously the first guy was 3,000, second guy was 2.5. And in the day I made $5,000, I signed two clients. One of them was for $3,000 and the other one was for $2,000, totaling 5K. But that's what the numbers look like. And again, right, these are real numbers. As you can see, even before that, I've never made a single dollar, but online before that, before December 2022, right? And that's just kind of what that looks like. But yeah, so hopefully you see that this is real, that I know exactly what I'm talking about. And in a 22-day period from December 1st, 2022 to December 22nd, 2022, I made $10,000. And the reason why it was 22 days was because if we think about December, at the end of December, it's actually the holidays. So people start leaving, they go on holidays, they go and celebrate their New Year's, and pretty much no one is in office and no sales activity is taking place. And that's why my last sales all came on December 22nd. But hopefully you see that this is real. So now that we have that out of the way, let me first explain to you what exactly I did to make $10,000 in a 22-day period. So the very first thing to understand is, what was I selling? What was the business model I was using to get to this revenue number? Well, I was building my own lead generation agency. More specifically, I was running a cold email lead generation business for B2B companies. So essentially what I do, you could go check out all the other videos on my YouTube channel because I talk only about, sending cold emails for B2B businesses. But what I was doing was I was approaching different B2B businesses and essentially pitching them. I was telling them, hey, we can help you generate more sales opportunities for your business. We do this entirely using cold emails. So what we'll do is we will set up all of your cold email infrastructure. We will act on your behalf and reach out to your potential clients, essentially pitching your service for you. And the end goal is to generate these highly qualified sales calls, these highly qualified leads that you will then, as the client, you will then jump onto these Zoom calls and pitch your own services and close these deals. So we were helping B2B businesses generate sales opportunities. That's exactly what I was doing. What I was charging was $2,000 to $3,000 setup fee. So obviously in the Stripe, I did it across four clients at around 2.8K, right? But what that actually looks like was each client, I was charging somewhere between 2 and 3K, right? So my first client was 3K. I think my second client was 2.5K, and then 2K, and then 3K again. So somewhere between 2 to 3K. And on top of that, I was doing $200 to $300 per qualified sales call. So if I was working with a client and I generated them 10 qualified sales calls at $200, that would mean that I'm making $2,000 on a month-to-month basis. Or if I generated 5 sales calls at $300, I'd be making $1,500. So it left a lot of room for additional profit on the back end as the months progressed, as the partnership continued. So what I was doing again, right, was I was reaching out to B2B companies, and this works for any industries, any B2B industries, recruitment agencies, marketing agencies, software development agencies, PR firms, SaaSes. Those are all the industries that I reached out to and I worked with, and I've signed clients in over the course of my lead generation business. In the 2022, when I first started, I was specifically working with recruitment agencies. And then after that, in February 2023, I moved into marketing agencies. But at least that $10,000 in December, I made it entirely by selling to recruitment agencies, pitching my lead generation services. So in terms of timelines, what was I doing? So I first started the business in October 2022. So I first thought about it. I first started my business in December 2022. At first, it was called Burrow Group. And then I think I went with that name for probably like half a year. And then I changed it to Salesway because I think Salesway just sounds a lot better as an agency name. Doesn't make a massive difference, right? But it was Burrow Group and then changed into Salesway. And what I did was in October 2022, the first things I did was I set up all my domains, basically the cold email infrastructure, all the domains, all the email accounts. I built my landing page in October 2022. I started my first cold email campaign in early November 2022. So even the title of this video is how I made $10,000 in 22 days, it's a little bit misleading in the sense where my first dollar from this business came on December 1st and I was at 10K on December 22nd. But really, I started the business in October, so around 2 months earlier. So really, I went from 0 to 10K in basically 60 days. But technically, I did make $10,000 in 22-day period, right? So just to give you a little bit more background context. So what was I doing on a day-to-day basis, right? And I've never seen anyone do this, but for the purposes of this video, so you could get a little bit more clarity as to how I was able to do this and so how you could copy me, I'm going to pull up my Google Calendar. The Google Calendar I used to time block every minute of the day, every hour of the day during this period. So I'm just going to open this up. So this is my Google Calendar that I used every single day, right? And that's personally what I use to this very day. Anytime I have anything, whether that's going to the gym, business, calls, sales calls, internal calls with my own teams or clients, I would document it on my Google Calendar and then I will wake up and follow that. But that's kind of what that looks like. So this is what you see from October 2022. As you can see right now, I was also a university student, by the way, right? So all of these things that you see, so ITM 795, this was a class that I was taking at university. I think I was in third year halfway through third year of university. And I was taking 5 courses this semester. So I built my entire business. I went from 0 to 10K while I was also a university student, a full-time university student in Toronto, Canada. So if you see these ITM codes, it's because I was taking courses at my university. So this is October 2022. Nothing too crazy happened this week. The week after this, so I'm just gonna move this over here. But all of these pink things that you see on my calendar, they are business activities. So I like to color code my stuff so that when I open my calendar, I could very easily see what I was doing, like the category. Was it for business? Was it for personal? Was it for school? Whatever the case that is. So I started my business on basically October 17th. I probably thought about this idea maybe a couple of days earlier, but my very first things that I did took place on Monday, October 17th. And as we can see, the very first thing I did was set up my Instantly, which is what I was using to send cold emails and to set up all my domains. So I first started my business on Instantly. Now I use smartly.ai. That's a separate story, but I started on Instantly. That's the very first thing I did. I had some midterms, so this was during midterm period or exam period at university as well. On Wednesday, I built my lead generation funnel. On the Thursday, I continued setting up my Instantly because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was doing this entirely by myself, and I probably got stuck somewhere. I don't even remember because this was over a year ago, but that's probably why it took me so long to set all of this stuff up. I was building my sales script. I was setting up my client onboarding process. So before I even had a client, I set up my client onboarding SOPs and my client onboarding systems, which looking back at it was kind of a waste of time. But I'll talk more about that later in this video. So I was scraping leads. I was revamping my sales script. So I remember I spent a lot of time, like I built out a sales script. I went on YouTube. I probably searched like SMMA live sales calls or something, or SMMA sales script. And I found probably like a random sales script. I copied it and then I continuously made edits based on my own sales habits, my own, like what kind of works for me, because everyone moves a little bit different on these sales calls. And that's what I was doing. I was building content. So that's what happened basically on the first week of my business in the week of October 17, 2022. The next week, I was doing some inbox management stuff. I was building up my landing page using Card. I was building out my onboarding process. I was learning how to do the cold email service delivery, right? I was joining different Facebook groups, researching my niche, stuff like that. I don't think I have it over here on my calendar, but somewhere around this week was when I was picking my niche, and that's how I came up with the recruitment agency. I remember I was actually at the gym and I was listening to this podcast about probably some dude, a founder who built his own recruitment agency from zero to some crazy revenue number. And in my mind at that time, while I was listening to that podcast, something just clicked and I was like, well, I'm working with B2B businesses and recruitment agencies are B2B businesses. So why don't I work with recruitment agencies? And that's the story of how I ended up choosing that niche. I don't have it on the calendar, but that's exactly what happened. Some other stuff for school. The next week, headed into November, I was continuously working on my business. So I was, again, building out sales scripts, right? So I was watching sales replays of YouTube videos I found online. I was creating my sales presentation, the Lucid, our processes, stuff like that. I had more tests for school, so exams, stuff like that. I was scraping leads off of Apollo on November 1st. I was building more sales content. Again, it does look like I spent a ton of time building up my sales process. My inbox management, doing some more research for onboarding, filming some looms, so evergreen and personalized looms for my outreach. And then that's basically what happened, right? And then in November, that's when I started my cold email campaigns. That's when I launched my campaign. So obviously when I was first setting up the domains 2 weeks earlier in October, there's a 14-day period where you just have to warm up all of your domains. Essentially, you're ramping them up because you can't just buy a bunch of email accounts and just start blasting cold emails the very next day. That's exactly how you end up in spam. So what you need to do instead is warm up your email accounts for 14 days. That's what I did, which is why I set it up my email accounts 2 weeks earlier in October. And then in November, I was able to start my cold email campaign. This is also when I started getting my first few sales calls at my lead generation business. So all of these green aqua looking things, that's when I was taking sales calls for my business, right? So my first sales call was November 7. November 7, I had these 2 sales calls with business owners. These are recruitment agencies. That's kind of what that looks like, right? While I was taking sales calls, I didn't have that many. I only had 2 this entire week because I just started my cold email campaign. I was still building out the other stuff. So I just go high level for a little bit to build my landing page, my booking page, my onboarding page, my calendar. I was connecting it to Stripe. I was setting up more domains. So I had domains at first. And then as time progressed, I realized that I probably should get even more domains, even more email accounts so that I could send higher volumes of outreach of cold emails. So as time progressed, I set up even more domains and more email accounts. At that time, I was using Google Workspace, Google Domains, the business version of Gmails. Now I use Outlook. Again, that's for a separate different video, but that's what I was doing at least in the beginning. I was setting up 2 new instantly campaigns. So I had my cold email campaign going on. It probably wasn't getting me the best results. And I was like, okay, time to start testing different things and setting up additional campaigns. I was studying for courses. So for ITM 415, I don't even remember what that is, but I remember I had an exam and I was studying chapter 4 to 6, studying chapter 5 to 6. I was building up my Notion for my own internal project management, all of that stuff. The next week in November, I had 2 sales calls. So one on Tuesday, and one on Thursday as well. I was building more on the back end of my business. So a lot of the patterns that you will see is on a day-to-day basis, I would be building a lot of the back end stuff. So building out the websites, building out the sales process. That's what it looks like. I spent a lot of my time doing, testing different cold email scripts, learning how to scrape emails, all of that stuff. So that's what happened on this week. The next week, I got a little bit more sales calls. I got 3 sales calls, 2 on Monday, 1 on Friday. I took a little nap on Monday, November 21st at 12:30 p.m. It's pretty funny how I time block this stuff. And as you can see, I was applying for jobs. So I was applying for internships, right? Because I guess I just wasn't certain that this worked out. At that time, I didn't have a lot of money. I was actually in debt, a couple $1,000s in debt. And in my mind, I needed to build a business that makes money, but obviously I was uncertain. I didn't know if it would work out. I didn't know if it was a good business model, if I'd actually make money. And I was like, okay, time to start applying for jobs, kind of as a backup in case this business, this lead generation stuff just never worked out. At least I would have a job. So that's what I did at a weekly class at Ryerson. I was applying to jobs as well during that time period. That's kind of what that looks like. The next week in November, I had a few more sales calls. So now I had 4 sales calls. So as time progressed, I started getting a little bit more sales calls. And the reason why was, number one, I was setting up more domains and more email accounts, meaning I was reaching out to more people every single day. But on top of that, the campaigns I was writing was getting better, because obviously the first time you do something is probably going to be the worst that you're ever at it. The second time you still might not be great, but at least you'd be better than the first time. And that's exactly what happened to me. As I was setting up more cold email campaigns, writing more cold email scripts, I started becoming a little bit more proficient at it. And that's why I started getting more and more sales calls. That's what I was doing. Applied to 10 jobs. That's what I was doing. I was building out my SOPs. So email inbox manager SOPs. I was trying to hire a video editor. I didn't actually end up hiring a video editor. But I remember at that time, on November 30th at least, I thought that hiring a video editor would actually help my business. And to give you the answer, it did not. I didn't end up hiring a video editor, and everything worked out fine. Recording and finish out inbox management SOPs, because what actually happened was I actually hired one virtual assistant. It was my inbox manager, because around this time I was starting to get a little bit more sales calls. Nothing too crazy, right? I was getting 2 to 5 sales calls, as you can see, every single week, but I was getting a lot of replies. And I started by taking managing my own inboxes on Instantly, replying back to people. I was sending cold emails. People replied back with questions or asking for the calendar link or whatever the case is. And up until this point, I was manually replying back to every single one of these leads. And I was doing it for like 2 to 3 weeks, but I was starting to get annoyed because it wasn't hard. It was pretty easy, and it didn't take hours of my day. It probably took me like 30 minutes to an hour, but I was starting to get annoyed. So I hired a virtual assistant. I started off by hiring a virtual assistant from Philippines. I was paying $4 USD an hour. And my inbox manager, it was a she, actually, her name was Alex. She would go in and reply back to these people. So I was thinking about hiring a virtual assistant, an inbox manager around this time. And that's why I was building out my inbox manager SOPs, my systems, documenting how I was doing everything so that I could hire out for that role. I was working on more SOPs, reaching out to Fiverr for some thumbnails, which I did in the beginning, and I'll show you in a little bit, but I don't actually use anyone for my thumbnails even to today, right? Because I realized it's not the best use of resources. In December, things really started to pick up. I was getting a lot more sales calls. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 calls, which is probably the most I've ever booked up until that point. I was spending a little bit more time on my business. So updating the email inbox manager SOPs, client portals, updating my scripts and stuff like this. And on this week, I've signed my first client. So on December 1st, this sales call, I'm not going to click inside of it because I don't want to dox my own client, but I closed this deal. Well, it makes sense, right? Because December 1st, I closed this deal and then I signed my first client. And on this day, on December 1st, I made $3,000. And I was starting to work on some of this stuff, right? The next week, I was getting even more sales calls. On the 15th, I closed another client. It was probably from the call on the 14th with Maddie. Well, it was, right? Because this was my client. But took a day to pay the invoice, and it obviously populated onto Stripe on December 15th, but that's what I was doing, right? And I see over here, this day was the World Cup. I don't think this was the final, Argentina versus Croatia, but it was the World Cup and I was watching that. I was still studying for some stuff for my university, right? So chapter 11 heuristics, chapter 9 math, chapter 10 math, theory review, stuff like that. I remember it was absolutely brutal studying for exams, because I remember thinking, I'm memorizing all of this stuff, but it was relatively useless. I don't even remember exactly what I was memorizing, but I was reading through all of this stuff, and I remember sitting there in the university library thinking to myself how useless all of this stuff was. And I was kind of right looking back at it now, a year and a half later. I was absolutely right. But at that moment, I didn't want to fail my university exam because I needed it to graduate from university. But that's kind of what I was doing. Oops. The next week, the final week leading up to the Christmas holiday, the New Year's holiday, I got a ton of sales calls, and I was really putting in my reps to take these sales calls, and I was getting better with each and every one of these sales calls. I was working on campaigns, so scraping leads, organizing leads sheets, investigating first lines, so personalized first lines, how to do that. I was doing a lot of these stuff. I took a lot of sales calls on the 22nd because that was the final day before people start going out of office. So I guess a lot of people I was reaching out to, they started in their mind, they had a little bit more urgency because if they wanted to do something, it would have had to take place on the 22nd because everyone's going to be leaving after the 23rd, right? So that's exactly what I was doing, and I was doing some work. And then that was basically my day-to-day process from October when I started my lead generation business to December 22nd when I was at 10K per month at the end of December. And again, right, I've never seen anyone do this. Breaking down the calendar, luckily I document all my stuff on Google Calendar, even to today. And I'm able to go back a year and a half earlier, 2 years earlier, and see exactly what I was doing on what specific date, what type of calls I was doing, what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's how I was able to show you this today. So hopefully you can see what my day-to-day process looked like. I was still in university. I was spending a lot of time building the business, but I also wasn't spending like 10 hours a day. I was probably working on any given day, probably somewhere between 4 and 8 hours a day on the business. For example, on the 22nd, the vast majority of my time took place on sales calls, but on other days, it was just building the business and studying for my exams for school. So that's kind of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And these were the inputs, these were the actions I was doing behind the scenes that led me to making $10,000 in a 22-day period in December 2022. So that's what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. That was my Google Calendar. While I was putting this flow chart together, I actually went back into my phone. I was scrolling through the timelines, and I was looking for pictures of kind of what I was working on a day-to-day basis, because at that time I was in university, I was using Snapchat and stuff like that, and I would take snaps of me doing work for the business and sending it to my friends so that I guess they just know what I was doing, social media, stuff like that. And I actually found this picture. So back in November 20th, we see the dates. This was my first campaign. So I launched it on November 20th, I think. Or maybe this was my second campaign, I don't remember. But this is a lead generation campaign for recruitment agencies. I reached out to 11,000 people, got 70% open rates, 6.8% reply rate. So 800 people replied back and got 193 positive responses. So 193 opportunities for me they're asking a question or wanted to see a video or sales asset or whatever the case is. And I remember my caption for Snapchat was kind of funny, but I said, imagine cold calling 11,000 people trying to sell them a $3,000 product. And I think this is one of the key benefits of cold emailing, because obviously cold emailing, cold calling, they both work. They've both existed since the beginning of the internet, since the beginning of time to generate sales opportunities. But the main difference is cold emails is a lot more leveraged in the sense where you are able to reach out to thousands of people with low amounts of hours spent. If you were to cold call 11,000 people, it will take you literally days, because on average, most people aren't able to cold call more than 40 to 50 people an hour. So if you were to do the math, how long would it take you? How many hours would it take you to cold call 11,000 people? Well, I'm not that great at math, even though I had a math exam, but it would have took me many, many days, many, many hours, many, many weeks to reach out to 11,000 people. And I think that's one of the largest benefits of cold emails is you're able to reach out to so many people at volume because it's leveraged, and this process is essentially automated. Obviously, to reply back to people, stuff like that, but 90% of it is automated. So that was my caption. It was kind of funny. I actually found this picture as well. So I was watching the World Cup, so the final World Cup game between Argentina and France, where Argentina obviously won. That was an amazing World Cup game. Very, very good. I remember I was also setting up email accounts. So I was connecting my Google domains. At the time I was using Google domains, and I was connecting it to Instantly. So that's what I was doing. And I was watching the World Cup game while setting up my email accounts, while working on my business as well. And I thought I'll throw this in here because I remember that moment very vividly in my own memory of the World Cup game, because that was an amazing game. But yeah, so that's kind of what that looked like. But what about the stuff I was actually working on, my landing page, my VSL. What did that look like? What did my first landing page look like? And I actually have that open as well. So this is Card, C-A-R-R-D. It's what I was using to build my landing page. It's very, very cheap. I think it's like $10 a year or $15 a year, something like that. And this is my very first landing page I ever created that I used in my first few cold email campaigns. It's very, very simple, as you can see. So my logo, headline: as a recruitment business owner, you have one job: generate leads. We book you meetings, you sign as many clients as humanly possible. And obviously I had a very short video explaining myself, what I was doing. I looked really, really young in this video. I was 22 years old. Now I'm 23, or yeah, I was 22. I think I just turned 22 when I filmed this. And obviously I had my calendar. So what did this look like? Because I want to show you this video a little bit. I actually loaded this up. This is what this looks like. Obviously, I changed my Calendly links since then. So obviously the Calendly that was attached to this landing page no longer works, but this is my landing page. Very, very simple, and absolutely nothing other than my logo, a headline, a video, and my calendar. And I'm just gonna play this video so that you can see a little bit. I might not play through the whole thing, but I'm just gonna play through a tiny bit so you can see what I was saying, how I was doing it, and just to give you a little bit of a hint, it was really, really bad. But let's just watch through the video. Hey, what's going on? My name is Jimmy Fung. I'm the founder of Burrow Group, where we book meetings for you so that you can spend less time worrying and thinking about where that next client is coming from, and more time actually closing the sales that are right in front of you. And we do this completely through organic strategies using cold emails and LinkedIn. Now, how do we know that this works? Well, we have been testing these same organic strategies over the past 2 to 3 years, and even growing our own business using these same strategies, right? So we know that this works. Now, who is this for? Well, we work with businesses in the staffing and recruitment industries. So if you're an agency, a search firm, or even just a business where you connect candidates to employers, then we might be a really good fit for you. So maybe the next question in your mind is, well, Jimmy, what is your pricing, right? How much am I going to need to pay per meeting? Well, over here at Burrow Group, we try to make it as fair as possible for you, right? We work completely off of results. So we're completely performance based. So what that means is if we're not booking you meetings on the calendar, then we don't get paid. So if you're looking to ramp up your lead generation for your staffing and recruitment company, then go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of this page, take a look at the calendar link, and fill out all the questions that are there. And we'd love to hear more about you and your company. Talk soon. Thanks. Yeah, so that was my video that I included on my very first landing page. It was not that good. I sounded very unconfident. I think I remember putting together the script and memorizing, just raw memorizing it and saying it back out loud over the course of this basically 2-minute video. And it was not good at all. The way I talk is completely different from how I do it now. And it makes sense. Obviously, I filmed hundreds of these videos now, so I'm a little bit more comfortable on the camera. I don't have a script anymore. I don't memorize anything like I did in this video. And it was just, quite frankly, looking back at this, it was pretty bad as a video, but it still cooked. It still worked really, really well. So the reason I'm showing you this is because if you're watching this video and you tell yourself, oh, I'm not that good on camera, I'm not that good at these things, understand that the very first time you do anything, you'll be really, really bad at it. And as you put in the reps, you do it a second time, the third time, the 10th time, the 50th time, the 100th time, the 1000th time, you will become a lot better at it. And I'm kind of living proof, right? The way I talk in this video, the very first time, well, this probably wasn't my first time doing it. It's probably like definitely my first 10 times doing it. But it's completely different than how I'm even talking right now on this very YouTube video that you are watching. So I am living proof that as you do this over and over again, you will become much, much better at it, more skilled and more confident at whatever it is that you're doing. So I wanted to show you this because a lot of people, they think in order to make money, they need to spend hours of their day they need to invest thousands of dollars building out this really fancy website. And obviously this website, it looks clean. You know, I like the color combo, but it's nowhere near fancy. And this probably took me like an hour to put together, maybe a little bit longer because I didn't know what I was doing, but you get the point. It didn't take me 2 weeks to build out this website. I was able to whip this up really, really quickly, and it was just bare bones. It has absolutely nothing on it other than a headline, a quick video introducing myself, and a calendar. And I find it quite funny how I kept on talking about we, but it was really just me. I was just doing everything by myself, so it should have been I, but for some reason I said we. Even over here, we book you meetings, but really I book you meetings. You sign as many clients as humanly possible, so I find it kind of funny. So that's what this looks like. This was on my website at the time. The domain was called theburrowgroup.com. I don't think it exists anymore, but that was the domain. That was the domain which this website, this landing page, was hosted. During this time, I also created a VSL because as I was sending cold emails, I started off by just pitching meetings. But then I started realizing that because I was selling to essentially random people, I was selling to these random recruitment agency owners, they didn't know who I was. They didn't know what I did. They certainly didn't trust me. And I started implementing more of a sales asset strategy. So rather than pitching a call at the end of my cold email, my very short cold email, I would ask them if they wanted to see a sales asset explaining how I could generate these sales opportunities for them. Once people said yes, that sales asset was a video I put together. It was a very short 10 to 20 minute video that I put together walking through my entire process at my own agency, what I was doing, how this works for them. And I actually have it open. It was actually on Loom. So when did I post this? Over 1 year ago. November 22nd, 2022. And this is the very first VSL that I ever put together. And this is what this looks like. It was a 13-minute Loom. It was pretty bad. It was on a Google Docs, no editing. You see my taskbar, you see all my bookmarks, zero editing. And this absolutely cooked. I was sending this to people who replied back to my cold email. I sent this to 120 people. Later on, I moved this VSL over to my YouTube channel. But at that time, when I first started my cold email campaigns, it was entirely on Loom. So I'm just going to play this a little bit. I'm not going to play through the full 13 minutes because that's just really long. But so that you could get a better idea for how I was talking, how bad I was talking actually, how unconfident I sounded, and what I was doing. So I'm just going to move this back over here. Let's get this started. Hey, hope you're having a really good day. Hope you're doing well. My name is Jimmy, and in today's video, I wanted to quickly record and show you how we make it unreasonable for agency and service business owners to not sign 3 to 5 clients a month. So that's 18 seconds of it, but even the way I was talking was very bad. And after filming hundreds of these VSLs, there's a lot of things I would have done differently. For example, rather than saying how we make it unreasonable for agency and service businesses, I would have been a little bit more specific. I would have said how we make it unreasonable for staffing and recruitment businesses to not blah, 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 blah. So even tiny things like that, but obviously at the time I didn't know. I was suffering from what's called, you don't know what you don't know. And obviously I didn't know what was the best way to create these VSLs. But the reason why I'm showing you these things is so that you could get a better idea that even my process of going from 0 to 10K in December 2022, in that 22-day period, what I was doing, the systems I was building, these videos, they were not perfect. In fact, nowhere near perfect. They weren't even good. They were pretty bad. And the reason I'm showing you this is so that you understand that as you're building through the business, you don't need things to be perfect. It's more important that things exist, even if it's not the best. And over time, as you make money, as you have more time, stuff like that, as you understand how things work and you improve your skill set, you sharpen your sword, you're able to go back and revisit these things. Because I ran with this VSL for probably the first 2 or 3 months of my own lead generation agency. And then after that, I went back and I was like, yeah, this is pretty bad. This is pretty garbage. Let me go and remake a better one. Let me go and make things better. And that's exactly what I did. And even for your own business, if you're watching this video and you're trying to start your own business, use that same mentality. Understand that the first time you do anything, it's not going to be good. There's no such thing as perfect. And if you spend too much time trying to perfect whatever it is that you're doing, you're just going to waste time and things are going to take a lot longer than they need to be. And if I didn't publish this because I was like, this isn't perfect, let me do this over and over again until it became really, really good, then I probably wouldn't have been able to get to 10K in a 22-day period in December, because I'd probably still be trying to work on this VSL and making it better. So that's kind of the reason why I'm showing you these two things, my website, my VSL, to show you that even the ones that I was doing in the beginning of my business, they were nowhere near perfect and they were pretty bad. So back to the flowchart. So how I made $10,000 in 22 days. So I was a university student at the time entering exam season. I was a full-time university student. So the reason I'm saying this is because even though you saw on my calendar, I was spending hours of my day doing this, I wasn't spending 60 hours all on the business. I also had other priorities. I was going to the gym, I had my family, my personal life, and I was also a university student. So if you're watching this video and you're trying to build a business, you don't need 60 hours a week dedicated to this. Now, obviously, the more hours you're able to spend on this, the quicker you get results, right? Pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. But I didn't need 60 hours of my life every single week dedicated towards building a business. I was doing it on a few hours a day. I got to 10K by signing 4 clients at $2,833 average sales price. You saw that through my Stripe. As I was building my business, it was entirely through cold email outreach. I was sending cold emails to these recruitment agencies, pitching my lead generation services. That's entirely what I was doing. I had close to no YouTube presence. I had a couple of YouTube videos that I'll show you in a bit, but basically nothing. I didn't have 50 different YouTube videos. I had close to no content, and I was not running ads. So I wasn't spending my money on Instagram ads, on Google ads, on Facebook ads, whatever the case is. I wasn't running ads at all. I had no team besides one VA, which was obviously the inbox manager, whose role was to help me reply back to people. And looking back at it, I didn't even necessarily need that inbox manager. It was just, I just got fed up. After managing my own inboxes for 2 to 3 weeks, I just got fed up. I was just super annoyed and I didn't want to do it ever again. I didn't want to touch it. And that's why I hired a VA. But you don't necessarily need to hire a VA. I didn't need to. It was just more of I wanted to. And obviously, I don't recommend people hiring people before they make their first dollar. Similar to what I did, obviously it worked out for me. But if it didn't work out for me, it would have been pretty bad, because even though it wasn't expensive, I was paying my inbox manager, I was paying her $4 an hour. She was working an hour a day. But if I didn't make money, if things didn't work out, I would have been down a few $100 at the end of all of this, right? And obviously I was also in debt. So it wasn't the best decision, but obviously everything worked out. In terms of expenses, my main expenses was the Google domains, was the email accounts, and Instantly. So it was a couple $100. And even in this business, it doesn't require thousands of dollars like if you were to do dropshipping or Amazon FBA, because it's not a product-based business, it's a service-based business. But you still need a couple $100 to invest into this business every single month. That's just how business works. If you were to think about it, there's no business that exists ever on this planet where you're able to make money without you spending money at all. Even if you were to make a lemonade stand, you still have to invest money into buying the lemons, as an example, right? So the exact same thing applies for this business. You don't need thousands of dollars, but you still need a couple $100 to invest back into the business to keep things running. In this case, it was the email accounts, right? Because we're sending cold emails. You can't be sending this out of free Gmail accounts or free Outlook accounts. You need the paid business versions. And that's what I was spending my money on. And obviously Instantly was what I was using to automate my cold email sending. I had a super simple landing page, as you saw. It took me probably 1 hour to create, maybe a little bit more. You get the point. It didn't take me hours. I had a VSL on a Google Docs with close to no editing, nothing too crazy. You just saw that. And I was not famous. I was not an expert. I was pretty terrible at marketing, as you can see with this terrible landing page, these terrible videos. And I just didn't have all of these skills that I have now, and I'm still able to get to 10K in 22 days by building this business, right? And all of this stuff, it was so bad, it was pretty impressive that I was able to pull it off. And I think looking back at it, the main reason why is, again, the idea that sometimes it's better to just have things that exist, even if it's not that good, rather than have it perfect. That's not to say to put out garbage on the internet, to send garbage cold emails or create a completely garbage VSL, but it doesn't need to be perfect. So what did I not need in order to get to 10K per month? Well, obviously I didn't need a large team. Again, I had one VA. I didn't need a fancy website. I didn't have a fancy sales presentation or a fancy sales deck. I didn't need a over-the-top, super edited VSL that you see all these YouTubers have with all these fancy graphics, fancy animations, fancy editing. I didn't have that for my VSL. I didn't have a complex CRM. I didn't use any project management tools. I was keeping track of my leads using Google Sheets. I was using Notion to keep track of my project management, more so notes. It wasn't even project management. It was more so notes. As I was learning how to do these things, I was watching different YouTube videos, learning from different resources online. And I was trying to take notes so that I remember what I was learning. I was doing it on Notion. You could do this on Google Docs, whatever the case is. So I didn't have any CRMs or any project management tools. I didn't have any automations. So no Zapier automations. I didn't do any of that stuff. I was doing everything manually. I didn't figure out the client onboarding process until after I got my first client. So even though on my Google Calendar, I had time blocks of me figuring out the client onboarding, I'll tell you this. What you expect is completely different from what happens in reality. And I spent hours of my day trying to come up with the perfect client onboarding system. And once I signed my first client, all of that stuff just went completely out of the window because what I built up until that point wasn't that relevant towards my first client. And I remember after signing my first client on December 1st, I remember scrambling, being like, oh shit, time to build a client onboarding process and watching a bunch of YouTube videos and then going from there. But that's exactly what I did. And what I built before that wasn't necessarily perfect and wasn't necessarily a good fit for what I actually needed at that time after I signed my first client. You also, or I didn't need a massive audience to do this. So my YouTube channel at that time, I think I had like 10 subscribers. So I had basically no audience, just 10 random people. Probably half of them were my friends or my own other YouTube channels that I have that I subscribe to it. So I didn't need a massive audience to do this. And again, right, you don't need to be famous or be an expert. I know I certainly wasn't. And I'm just going to show you this for my YouTube. So this is my YouTube channel that I have. And this was in the beginning, right? So obviously I have a couple videos before this that I filmed from school and stuff like this. But as we can see, I technically uploaded my first business related YouTube video on October 13, 2022. It's unlisted now because they're pretty bad. 2 videos on October 13 about focusing and what does it take to succeed. I read 100 marketing books. This was my VSL, how to get clients with cold outreach. Should you build rapport in cold emails, and stuff like that. And obviously now there's a little bit more views because they're still public on my YouTube channel, but I guarantee you all of these videos got close to no views, probably like 10 views, 20 views, that type of thing. And that's what I was doing. So I didn't have 50 different videos like I do now on my YouTube channel. I had like these 5 YouTube videos and I was not getting views. So even these videos, right? What does it take to succeed? 4 views. That's probably what I was getting on all of these YouTube videos. And then now obviously today, my YouTube channel is a lot larger. I have almost 3,000 subscribers. So if you're subscribed, thank you. I appreciate you. But what happened was a lot of people started going back and watching some of these things. So even this video, my VSL was 1,600 views. It was not at 1,600 views. It was nowhere near 1,600 views. And it just started picking up as my YouTube channel started growing. So I didn't have an audience for any of these things. So back to the flowchart. So what did I need then to make 10K per month? Well, what I needed was the most simple, or I guess the worst version of my landing page and my worst version of the VSL. I needed email domains and email accounts that were warmed up and ready to send cold emails out of, because that's the cornerstone, the foundations of this business, since we're sending cold emails to pitch my own services, my own lead generation services. What I needed was a clear understanding of my audience and what their key problems and pain points were. So obviously I was working with recruitment agencies. I needed to research that because I don't have any recruitment experience. I don't run a recruitment agency. I didn't know anything about that when I first started, but I obviously learned. And how did I learn? I was watching YouTube videos. I was joining Facebook groups. I was doing all of that stuff to research and try to put myself in the shoes of a recruitment agency owners, so that when I jumped onto these sales calls, I didn't make myself look like a fool because I didn't understand how their business model works. And that's kind of exactly what happened. My first sales call, I remember, with a recruitment agency, I didn't know what was going on at all. And as time progressed, I obviously learned, right? I went back to do research after that very first sales call where I basically just flopped and didn't know what to talk about and didn't understand their business model. And I realized I didn't want to ever make myself look like a fool again. And I went back to do research. So that's what I needed to do. I also needed a direct offer and a cold email script which addressed the desired outcome. So you can only build this after you understand your audience, what they want, and what their key problems are. So you can address them in your cold email script. And I also needed a very simple sales script, which allowed me to understand their current situation, their problems, and what they needed for success. So obviously on the Google Calendar, you have saw that I spent a lot of time building my sales script. And I could 100% confidently say all of those hours that I spent building a sales script, it went all out the window as well. And the reason why is because the way that you learn how to build sales scripts, if you watch different YouTube videos online on sales scripts, it's a little bit different, or not a little, it's very different from how sales calls actually happen in real life, because they're free-flowing conversations. People aren't just going to sit there on the other side and let you ask 15 different questions nonstop. That's not how it works. People will get annoyed, and it's a free-flowing conversation, so it could go in any direction. There's a bunch of different personalities, different types of people that exist, and you just have to learn how to have a fluid and proper conversation with different people. But obviously, there are very specific things that you need to understand from their end in order to successfully make a sale. So my advice is to keep your sales script simple. Start with some form of script, and then understand that the sales script that you have, you're probably going to end up deviating from that on an actual sales call. So that's what I needed in order to make 10K. So biggest mistakes. What were the biggest mistakes I made, which kind of slowed me down? And now obviously I was still able to, from the time I started my business to the time I collected 10K, it was basically 60 days. It took me 22 days to go from my first sale to 10K per month. So it was relatively quick for me, because in the past, previous to this, I built other businesses, right? I tried dropshipping, I tried SMMA, I tried an email marketing agency. They all failed and I didn't make money. And in some cases, I actually lost money, but I had business experiences in the sense where I spent months, like a year, something like that, trying different things, even if I failed. So that allowed me to come into this business model with a tiny bit of experience, nothing too crazy. As you can see from my VSLs, I wasn't the best at selling stuff. I wasn't the best at talking on camera, but I still had these tidbits of experiences that allowed me to better understand how to approach business. And that's kind of what allowed me to accelerate my timelines. But there were still a lot of things that even today, this version of me, this version of Jimmy, if I could go back, I probably think I would have went from 0 to 10K in maybe 45 days, maybe 30 days even, because I understand exactly how this works. And there's a lot of things I would have done differently that at that time I did that kind of slowed me down. So for example, the very first thing was not setting up email domains and email accounts sooner due to warming periods. So obviously I set up these email accounts in November. And as you saw on my Google Calendar, a few weeks later, I set up even more domains and email accounts. And looking back at it, I probably would have just started all at once. And obviously I think the reason why I didn't do that was because of money, because these email accounts does cost money. And I was a little bit hesitant, and I was kind of just scared of going all in. But looking back at it, knowing what I know now, I would have just started with more email accounts and more email domains, even if it costed me a little bit more money, because that would allow me to reach out to more people, generate more interest, generate more eyeballs for my offer, for my business, and get more sales calls, and obviously close more deals. The second thing was focusing on too many things at once. So if you watched that video on my website, I talked about how I'd help these recruitment businesses generate leads using cold emails and through LinkedIn. Now I'll tell you this, I never did the LinkedIn stuff, ever. I never ran LinkedIn for a single client. I only did cold emails, but for some reason, I thought that it was needed for me to pitch two different services to, I guess, increase the value of my offer. And looking back at it, I would have just focused on one thing. So not focusing on Facebook DMs, Instagram DMs, LinkedIn DMs, and cold emails. I would have just focused on one thing, picked one thing, and went all into that. And obviously I did that for cold emails, and that's exactly what I would have done sooner, because I spent some time learning LinkedIn. Even though I never actually delivered that for any clients, I still wasted a few hours of my life essentially learning LinkedIn, when those few hours could have been dedicated towards mastering cold emails right off the get-go. I spent way too much time picking a niche. So obviously, before I went to that gym where I listened to podcasts of recruitment agencies, I spent many days thinking about what would be the best niche. And looking back at it, I probably wouldn't have done that. I would have just picked one niche and just went right ahead, because at the end of the day, you never really know. And because this service, it works so well, because every single business owners, they need new leads. They need sales opportunities. They need new clients. So it works in any B2B industry. And I wouldn't have spent as much time just racking my brain thinking about, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do marketing agencies? Should I do SaaS companies? Should I do recruitment agencies? I would have just picked one and went with it. Again, not researching my niche fully. I went over that earlier. A big mistake I made was not testing multiple variations of email scripts. So what I did was I wrote one cold email script and I said, this is it. And I just started it. But what I should have done instead was I should have created multiple variations of cold emails, split test that, and let the data suggest which would have been better. I obviously didn't do that for my very first cold email campaign, which is why a few weeks later, I needed to set up more campaigns, cold email campaigns, because I started realizing that the very first one I did wasn't working and it wasn't working well. And I know cold emails works for sure. So whatever I was saying was not the best. And there were different things I needed to say. And I started split testing that. The next thing was not focusing on the direct next step in front of me. So for example, focusing on client onboarding before I had my very first client, because there's the way that you expect things, the way you plan things, and the way that things transpire in reality. And those are different things. This happened for my client onboarding. This happened for my sales script. And what I would recommend, what I would have said to myself, if I could go back 2 years earlier, 1.5 years earlier, I would have just said, focus on the direct step in front of you. So focus on getting replies first. Focus on your cold emails. Don't focus on client onboarding before you've had a client. Don't focus on the sales script before you've had your very first sales call. Focus on what's in front of you, which for me at that time was getting replies to my cold emails. Focus on that first. And then once I sign a client, then do the client onboarding. Once I start generating sales calls, then focus on the sales script. And that was one of the largest things that kind of just slowed me down because I was wasting my time on things that all went out the window once I actually needed it. The next thing was understanding that you cannot please everyone, so dismiss the haters, because at the end of the day, what we're doing is sales. You're sending cold emails. People will get pissed off. People will get annoyed. People will reply back to you in a very rude way. And if you let that get into your head, it's going to stop you from progressing forward. But understand that this is sales and you are interrupting their day and these things happen and you cannot please everyone. So you just need to ignore that and understand what you're doing, understand you're providing value to the marketplace and continue moving forward and pushing ahead. The next one is understanding that you are providing massive value. You're solving a key problem for business owners, how to get more clients, how to generate these sales opportunities. And hence, you are paid in proportion to your value. So not looking at it at a get rich quick scheme. So obviously, it's very easy to say, oh yeah, I want to make thousands of dollars. But you have to understand why business owners paid me $3,000 is because they have a massive problem that is worth a lot more than $3,000. And they felt like I was the solution that would allow them to fix the problem. The problem they had was they didn't have enough sales opportunities. They didn't have enough meetings. They didn't have enough clients. And by paying me, they would have fixed all of these problems. So understanding that, because I think in online business, it's very easy to get caught in the trap of thinking this is a get rich quick scheme, but it's not. No business is. You have to understand that the more value you provide, the more value your service provides, the more money you can make. And obviously lead generation, it's a super valuable service, right? Again, every business owner needs this. Hence, you're able, or I was able to charge so much money, thousands of dollars upfront, because I was solving a massive problem for these business owners. Again, right, you get paid directly in direct proportion to your ability to solve a niche's problem. The next one was I was too attached to the outcomes and the results of what I was doing versus focusing on the inputs and the actions. So what I meant by this was if I looked at my Google Calendar, and in the early weeks where I was only generating 1 sales call or 2 sales calls or 3 sales calls, which is pretty bad, if I only focused on those results, I would have just shut down all my cold email campaigns because I would have said this wasn't working. But what I should have done instead was I should have focused more on the input. So how do I get more sales calls? Well, the answer is by sending more cold emails. That's the input that leads to the action of getting more sales calls. And I struggled with that a lot in the beginning as I was building my business, and looking back at it, always focus on the inputs and the specific actions you need to take today to get you the result that you want tomorrow. The next one is obviously the more you invest, the larger reward. So when you think of investing, it's not necessarily money, even though that's an aspect of it. There's investing resources. There is investing time. There's investing energy. And the more of these three things you're able to invest, the more likely you are able to succeed and the larger your rewards. Because obviously someone who's only able to spend 30 minutes a day in this business, they will get completely different results than someone who can spend 3 to 4 hours a day. Or in my case, investing money, right? Again, right? I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this business is not free. So if you think that you could build a lead generation agency for $0, this is not for you. And in fact, I don't think there's a single business where you can make money, large amounts of money. We're not talking about making $50, making thousands of dollars without you needing to invest. So if you're not even able to invest $200 to $300 a month, then business is probably not for you, right? You know, I understand if people have poor financial situations. I was there. What you should probably do is you should get a job first, work that job for a few months to run up some savings, run up a few $100 in savings, a few $1,000s before you look into business. Because if you have zero, then it's going to be very hard to make business work. And even in this business model, you don't need thousands of dollars to make this work, but you still need a few $100 to host your website, to buy your domains, to set up your payment processes. Stripe, it costs money. And you need to pay for all of these things. And if you're unable to pay for all these things, then business might not be the best for you in your current position, right? So obviously, again, the more you invest, the larger rewards. And the biggest thing that I was suffering from was the case of not knowing what I didn't know, right? So I think this is a very big thing because it's kind of just like ignorance. Because even for the VSL, now I know how to make good VSLs, but when I was first creating my VSL, it was bad. And half of that was because I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know the best way to make VSLs. I didn't know the best way to make cold email scripts. And that's kind of the largest reason why I know that if I was able to teleport myself back to that version of Jimmy on November 2022, I probably would have made money in half the time. Easy. Because now I know exactly how to do this, right? And it's the biggest case of not knowing what I didn't know. And obviously there's different ways to learn this. If you can find a mentor who's where you need to be, then obviously that's the quickest way. Watching different YouTube videos, learning online, the internet is so vast. You're able to find literally anything you want to know or you need to know online from a quick Google search away. And that was the biggest thing that I was suffering from, was the case of not knowing what I didn't know. So yeah, that's pretty much this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. In this video, I explained everything I did to get to $10,000 in 22 days so that you can copy me. Hopefully this gives you a lot more insights if you're building your business or you're first starting as to the type of things that you need to do, the type of actions you want to take that will get you that result, which in this case is for me, making $10,000 in 22 days. What I was doing, what my VSL looked like, what my landing page looked like, my terrible landing page. So hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. See ya. Bye-bye.